It's actually not the first time that an atheist considers Mormonism credible or respectable.
My claim, which might bother some people in this circle, and this is why I thought maybe we could find a little bit of middle ground here. Like it. Because I represent a form of Christianity that a lot of people don't even consider as Christian. I'm a Latter-day Saint.
Hey everyone, this is All Those in Favor. I'm Baylor. This is Cade, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the secular case for Mormonism.
Okay, so the video we posted of Alex O'Connor saying that Mormonism is fascinating and it's got this rich history and this rich this list of doctrinal commitments that most people don't know about.
Alex, if you had to join one Christian denomination, which do you believe has the most consistency according to the history of the church and Scripture? This is where Alex would have to pick a jersey.
Mormonism, of course.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
We don't consider them Christians. Give me another one.
No, but that's the interesting thing is I think Mormonism's a fascinating religion in many ways. A lot of people aren't aware of its.
It's actually not the first time that an atheist considers Mormonism credible or respectable when compared to traditional Christianity. So we've got a couple clips that I want to go through here. So do you want to go and pull up that first thing I sent you?
Yeah, from Bart Ehrman.
Yes. So I want to talk about what are the reasons why atheists might be a little more inclined to respect Mormonism and their positions more than traditional Christianity or any of the other major monotheisms. So this is similar to the reason why Alex O'Connor kind of got in this hot spot in the first place, is because he, in one of his videos, compared the evidence of the resurrection to the evidence for the gold plates. Yeah. And this is something similar. This is a debate between, I think his name is Stephen Bass.
Yeah, Justin Bass.
Justin Bass. Justin Bass is a Protestant, and he wrote a book arguing for the resurrection of Jesus. He takes this thing called the bare facts approach, which isn't what all Christians do, but he kind of says there are like three main facts: that there was an empty tomb, that the empty tomb was discovered by Joseph of Arimathea, and Bart Ehrman is a Old and New Testament scholar, also an atheist, and he's like kind of the leading voice both publicly and academically in textual criticism. So taking the words of the Bible and really kind of getting into the meat of what they're...
Oh, did he write Misquoting Jesus?
He wrote Misquoting Jesus. He wrote How Jesus Became God, and incredible books. He's really, really good. But as this guy is talking about the evidence for the resurrection, Bart Ehrman says, well, what about Mormonism? And that's what we're going to watch.
Would be a pretty good answer to why he's had this
Extraordinary anomaly impact.
No, I don't think it has any relevance to it.
No relevance.
No relevance. I mean,
that's fine.
I mean, okay. Let me put it like this. Okay.
Okay.
So the Mormon Church. Back to the Mormons for a second. The early Christian movement, from the days of Paul up to when Constantine converted. Mm-hmm. Okay, it grew. If you actually just crunch the numbers, like you start out, just say in Paul's day. I would say before. Say right after the resurrection, there are like 20 people. Okay, who believe in you. You got the 11 disciples. You got a handful. Say there's 20 people.
20 to 3 billion. Yeah.
So by the time you get to Constantine, by the time he converts, there's probably 5 or 6 million Christians in the world. So if you crunch the growth rate, like what would it take to get from 20 to 5 or 6 million at that time? It's about 30% every decade. Okay, and so the question is, does that require a miracle or not, or can you explain it by natural grounds? And the Mormon Church has grown that rate since it was founded by Joseph Smith. Now, I wouldn't want to say that Mormonism is necessarily true because it grew at that rate, or that the angel Moroni necessarily revealed the golden plate.
Okay, pause real quick. Most of this time he says Moroni. So I actually don't know why he slipped in Moroni there.
He clutched up there.
But the growth rate is an argument used by Christians all the time. They're saying like, oh, if Jesus was just a preacher, if he was just this Hellenistic Jewish rabbi, then how did so many people so quickly come to believe that he was God? And they don't realize that we can make that same argument, and Islam can make that same. The rate that Islam grew was incredible.
Dude, there's probably a lot of like I bet Starbucks can claim that growth rate in terms of, I mean, seriously, when you start with this, just mathematically, when you start with a small number, like 1 Starbucks or 12 apostles, or like once you get into the hundreds or the thousands, you're immediately, like, the math's astronomical. It's such a strange argument.
Is God, if we're going to use this argument, because Uber grew in like 5 years.
Yeah,
to like,
it totally took over everything.
But sorry, keep going.
It grew at that rate. If Christianity had continued to grow at that rate, after Constantine, by the end of the 4th century, there would have been more Christians than humans in the world. So the rate of growth, or the number of people who come to believe in something, is not an indication of the miraculous beginnings of the faith.
But I didn't say that. I'm asking you, you did not give me an extraordinary anomaly for Mormonism. I gave you an extraordinary anomaly for Jesus of Nazareth.
The extraordinary anomaly is that the angel Moroni showed Joseph Smith these plates.
No, but
that's never happened before.
But no one
out of
is
107 billion people in the world, that has never happened to anybody.
But that's not what I think.
Yeah.
Like, you see the point. We can keep going. That's just...
No, it's literally like, if I make an extraordinary claim or a fantastic claim, you need to give me the benefit of the doubt here. Hey, maybe, it could be plausible, but if the Mormons make a fantastic claim or an extraordinary claim, that's ridiculous. How would anyone ever believe that? It's just like, the double standard is crazy.
The world, that has never happened to anybody.
We're back to the same point. Nobody outside of those people believe that.
Either did
Moroni
the people.
Okay, wait, that's...
It's like nobody
outside of Christians believe Jesus was resurrected.
Yeah.
We can't put... I think Bart's about to destroy him on that, but that is like the worst point ever.
The people believing Jesus' resurrection are Christians.
Well, no. Skeptics and unbelievers all around the world have been convinced by the
They've
resurrection
converted,
of Jesus.
and they've been converted to Mormonism.
Oh, well.
He acts like the only Mormons out there are like people raised in Utah, when in reality, like, there's more Mormons who speak Spanish as their first language than English.
And our growth is more from missionary work than children being born into the...
Oh, 100%. Like, there's more Mormons outside of the U.S. than inside the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
In Utah, yeah.
No, you're not hearing me again.
I know.
30% growth rate.
They're working off, on that point, they're working off Christian capital. I mean, it's a cult of Christianity. So
well,
they're working off Christian capital.
Christianity is working off of Jewish capital.
I mean, can we...
But Judaism didn't spread.
I know we've kind of wandered into this final bedrock fact, and I just want you to establish it, though, just for the listening and watching audience, Justin. Just talk about this, why you believe that the rise of Christianity, or as you could put it, the rise of the Nazarenes, constitutes not just, a fact of history, but something that points towards the truth of the resurrection.
Billions of people today are convinced. When you go out on your mission in Jordan and you convince somebody, okay, suppose you convince an entire household, and suppose they can convince 100 people that Jesus was raised from the dead. How does the fact that those 100 people now believe show what happened to Jesus' body?
Okay, I feel like you're missing
I just asked a question. I just asked you a question. I asked you a question.
I would agree with you. That doesn't prove.
Okay. So
That's not what I'm saying.
Convincing people doesn't prove it, then the fact so many people have been convinced does not prove it.
It's not that so many people. It's not necessarily that so many people has been convinced. It's that we know what the raised Jesus desired, and what he desired, we now have 20/20 hindsight, and we can say, look, what he desired has happened. And so let me give you an example. If the writing in Mormons, if Moroni had said, I want the Mormon message to eventually dominate America and America to be completely Mormon, okay? And let's say we're sitting at a table in some future time and all of America was Mormon. Yes. It was completely Mormon.
Yes.
I would say, yeah, you know what? That looks like some evidence that Moroni might have had, there may be something to him.
Okay.
So in the same way.
Let's pursue that then.
So
let's pursue
in
it.
the same way.
I like how the bar for us is like the farthest he's willing to go is there may have been something to Moroni. He won't even admit the like supernatural.
Yeah, if it was the exact same, like if like the evidential merit was the exact same, he wouldn't say that he would just convert. Like if the evidence for the Book of Mormon or whatever, what have you, was the exact same as Christianity. He wasn't even willing to say, I would be a Mormon.
Yeah. Well, and the most fascinating part of these debates I think to anyone, not only to us, but I think especially to just someone spectating this kind of dialogue, is Moroni, through giving us the Book of Mormon, corroborates the witness of Christ, like the witness of not just like, of him as the Savior, but the witness of him as the risen, resurrected Messiah, because the Book of Mormon has thousands of people who witness him in the flesh in 3rd Nephi.
And that's the same exact argument that the Christians make for the resurrection. They'll say there were 400 or 500 people that saw him because Paul said there were 500 people that saw him. We don't know those people's names. We don't know who they are. It's almost the exact same as the Book of Mormon saying that these people saw Jesus Christ.
Well, I would say it's far less compelling because the Book of Mormon has names of people who saw him. They have, the Paul example, that's in Corinthians, right? Wherever that's at.
Yes.
It's one verse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That just mentions it. The Book of Mormon has all these chapters of, hey, Jesus came. This is what he said. He left. We went. We got more people. Hey, he called these 12 men out of the crowd. He, like all of these details. And if a Christian was willing to they wouldn't have to admit the truth of the Book of Mormon or anything, but they could turn this talking point on its head on one of these atheist guys by just saying like, well, you're right. There is some evidence of Moroni. And if you think that evidence is compelling, Moroni actually, in his book, in the Book of Mormon, there's thousands more people that witness the resurrected Christ.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the whole momentum shifts.
But they're not going to do that.
They would never do it.
Never. And the difference is, there is a clear difference in that 1 Corinthians can be squarely placed in one of the first 2 centuries. So like we know linguistically and archaeologically that book is ancient. Christians would probably say that the Book of Mormon, we don't know if it's ancient. And I will admit there's like a little bit more ambiguity there. Like the Book of Mormon is a 19th century translation. It emerged in the 1800s.
Sure.
But that's we don't just believe in the Book of Mormon. We have both for a reason, and that's why our case is stronger. But if you're just going to say one is true and one is not, even if they have similar historical merit, then you're just outing yourself as not being open to the actual evidence. You're basically just saying, I believe this and I'm just trying to justify it. And anything that disconfirms my theory, I'm going to try and explain away and ignore as much as I can.
Yeah, and it's evidence that supports your claim.
Yes.
Like this
they
whole
should be all over it.
Because so many people make this claim of they're like, okay, well, like a lot of atheists or, just people today, they make this claim of, oh yeah, like why would God, like if Jesus was real, why would he just show up 2,000 years ago to these people in this small region of the world? And the idea that as a Christian, you can say, hey, there's actually evidence that he revealed himself to who he called his other sheep on the other side of the world. And then when he revealed himself to them, he told them, hey, there's other people. There's other parts of Israel, the house of Israel, that need to see the resurrected Christ. Then I'm going to manifest myself to them. And it's such a cool idea to say, hey, here's evidence on this continent of Jesus as the Messiah, as the Savior of the world. And here's evidence on this continent as Jesus. And all of a sudden it becomes the only religion in the world. It's not pulling its evidence from one geographic region.
And this is where we have a lot of merit on our side, is because we are far more pluralistic than Christians. We are happy to accept that other people are having legit religious experiences, even if that is within another faith tradition. We don't have to sit there and claim that any religious experience or any sort of religious claim outside of our denomination or outside of our organization is wrong. The Christians are committed to that. They shouldn't be, but they are for some reason. Like they're not logically committed, but for some reason they're really ideologically committed to that idea. And I think it's because they perceive anything that is outside of what is orthodoxy, anything that they will label as heresy, is so threatening. If anything that they have considered heretical for centuries actually ends up having a little merit to it, then, and they don't need to see it like this, but they see their whole foundation is falling. But really, it's like, we have this conception that God can speak to everyone, and that God has spoken to other religious leaders. He spoke to the reformers. He spoke to philosophers like Plato and Aristotle. That's literally the position of our church, is that he speaks to just about everyone, and anyone can have a religious experience or claim religious truth.
Yeah, when we live in a world where it's not likely that God is entirely interventional.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's times where God intervenes, and there's miraculous experiences that people record throughout history, but for most people that live today or have ever lived, their experiences with God are going to be within the context of their environment, right?
Yeah.
And so if that's someone growing up in an Islamic region having an experience with God within the context of Islam, like, we don't discredit all of that good or all that could potentially be agreeable with our doctrine or our theology just because of where it came from. Because someone might, say something in Hinduism or in Buddhism or in any religion in the world, and we can see that and we can say, hey, that's interesting that you've come to that truth, because we've come to a similar truth through the context of Christianity and the teachings of Jesus. And it doesn't mean that just because we believe that there are eternal truths that God will eventually reveal to everyone, doesn't mean that no one else can have a religious experience.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a common atheist argument where they say, like, if God was real, we would expect that everyone come to similar beliefs about him, because he would want people to know how he is, and he would want people to believe the same things about him. So the world we observe right now, where the religion you identify with is heavily influenced by geographical location and culture, that's not what we would expect, is what they say. But I think we just have a lower standard as a church. We just have this lower view we have this more obtainable view of what revelation is and what communication with God is. And we just dive fully into this. We are not perfect. Revelation has to be interpreted by us. We have to be capable of grasping it. And because we kind of take this altered view of what communication with God looks like, it kind of makes that problem go away. Because when I hear that a Catholic from South America has a vision of the Virgin Mary, I don't feel a need to discredit that experience, whereas a Protestant would. Because in their view, the Virgin Mary doesn't make appearances like that. But for me, I just say, well, that's probably a legitimate experience, like, depending on other factors. But I don't feel any need to just dismiss that, because if God sees that that's the best way to communicate with the person, he's going to do it that way.
Or we would have some qualifying questions. Like, we would be like, hey, did that experience strengthen your faith that Jesus Christ is the Savior?
Absolutely.
And if the answer to that question is yes, then, I think we try, and everyone should try, to not prescribe what God would do. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, even though in this example, like, I would be hesitant to say that maybe I wouldn't want to say what God would or wouldn't do.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think so many people are just like, oh yeah, God would never reveal himself to the boy Joseph in 1820, or the God would never do this, or God would never let these people into heaven because they don't understand the nature of whatever those fancy words are that you use, like of the Trinity or whatever.
So, our original message, our original topic was why some atheists are really considering, not, I don't want to say really considering, but why they engage and why they seem to like take care in presenting LDS beliefs. And so far we've covered that the evidence for Christianity, the resurrection at least, is really similar to the evidence for the Book of Mormon.
Just older.
Just older. Add on to this that we don't accept eternal conscious torment. We don't believe that's a thing. And our view of how salvation works is extremely just and extremely fair. The worst people ever will receive some sort of grace and some sort of reconciliation and be able to just live in happiness forever. Yeah. So like, we don't need to go crash out in people's comments, because I don't think Catholics are going to be eternally tortured for being wrong. Like, it's just not what we think. We just have a totally different foundation that we're talking from.
Well, didn't I just saw, that one Christian influencer guy who has the beard? I just saw him talking about, I don't know.
That's all of them, dude. That's literally all of them.
Trust me, you'll know him. We'll put the video with this and you'll see him, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. But he was talking about this exact thing. I saw a reel about it.
I want to ask you this question. It's a little deep question. I haven't fully fleshed out my answers. I kind of hide my opinion on it because it's better to tie an anchor to my neck and drop me in the abyss than to ever put people in the wrong direction of the Lord. So I pray he forgives me if I'm speaking incorrectly. But the more I read the scripture, the more I truly do not believe that hell's eternal.
No, it's not. You're gone eternally.
Yeah.
You disappear. You're burned up.
A lot of people don't agree with us.
Why would a loving God torture you forever for a lifetime that only expanded 7 decades?
And he was like, I know this might be a little bit like
George Janko,
heretical, basically, but he was like, what if hell's not eternal in the time sense? And I was like watching it and I was like, dude, this dude has no idea that he is presenting a restored truth that was restored through Joseph Smith. Like, this idea of eternal torment, meaning God's torment, basically, or the torment of removal from being with God, like that's described in Doctrine and Covenants. He's presenting it as an original thought, which is cool, and maybe an evidence of people receiving revelation in different contexts from God.
But did you read his comments?
People were pissed.
There wasn't one supportive comment. Not one.
Yeah. And it's because that idea that
because that's a heresy.
Yeah, it's challenging, like anything that challenges their worldview is so threatening. And it's because of that idea that they're married to, that the Bible, for many Christians, I'm not going to say for all Christians, but there are Christians where the Bible has become God, where they say, no, the Bible is all the things that you would use to describe God or to describe Jesus. They use those descriptors for the Bible. No, the Bible's inerrant. The Bible is perfect.
The final authority.
And they literally interpret John 1:1. The Word was with God. I've had multiple Christians quote to me John 1:1. The Word was with God and the Word was God. And they think the Word is the Bible that didn't exist when John wrote those words, instead of thinking that the Word is the Logos or Jesus. And it's literally a verse about God that they are interpreting to me in the Bible. And when you lock yourself into that worldview that there is one source of truth and it is the Bible, and even if God opened the heavens and said to me a new truth, a unique truth, I can't accept that because it's not in the Bible. And so many people have locked themselves into that worldview unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And they don't have to.
And here, on the other hand, we have our advice to Protestants: stop talking about eternal conscious torment. It's weird and it's not a philosophically rich position. Here is my invitation to secular people. At least consider the merits of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, philosophically speaking. And here's what I'm talking about. 1, we reject eternal conscious torment. And we have an extremely fair and just conception of the afterlife. 2, We accept the pre-existence. And that's important because it is it sort of deafens the problem of evil. Anything that we experience here is something that we agreed to. It's something that we chose to participate in, knowing that the reward would outweigh the loss and the pain. So when atheists will say, like, God literally made me knowing that I probably wouldn't accept him and that I'm just going to suffer here on earth and then die and then go to hell, that's not our view. We believe that everyone eternally existed from way before we came here and chose to come here knowing that the good outweighs the bad. And 3, this one's a little more weird. You might disagree with me, actually. But if you're an atheist and you don't think that, you think all there is matter, you think you're a materialist, you think that we're just made of our brains and our bodies, that view is entirely compatible with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you are considering being religious, but you just, like, I mean, maybe you like the participation in it, but you just can't get yourself to believe that there's like this spiritual thing, there's like physical things and spiritual things, that's not a required view of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
But what do you mean by that?
There are a lot of materialists in the church. A lot of people say that because the Doctrine and Covenants says that all spirit is matter.
Yeah, there's still spiritual material.
Yes, but it's all matter.
Yeah.
That view is entirely compatible with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So if that's a barrier to you, then come hang out.
Well, and that idea is so hard for people to understand. It's like, hey, there's different views that are available to you within the context of Mormonism, or within the context of, it really should be any religion, but so with the Protestant mentality of prescribing beliefs to people and saying, hey, you have to believe like me or else it's all off. Everything's off. Jesus, salvation, grace, off the table if you don't agree with this principle. And that's just not how we operate. People are always like, well, no, Mormons believe this. I knew a Mormon who believed this. And it's like, well, I guess that belief is available to them. Like, I still think their faith in Jesus is like real and important, even if they don't agree with me on that issue. That doesn't make it the opinion of the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so there are obviously some things that are not available to you in Mormonism. Like, you have to believe that Jesus is the Christ.
Yeah.
In Mormonism. Like,
or else you're not really a Mormon.
Yeah, you can't circumvent that.
But the list of required positions is so small.
Yeah.
It's really, really small.
And it's clear.
So yeah, that's about all we got. Follow us on Instagram, @allthoseinfavor. If you disagree with us, if you agree with us, leave some comments. Tell us what you liked, what you disliked. We'd love to hear feedback. If you want to come on the pod, also hit us up. We're always looking for people. And if you also have any content you want us to review or cover, or any specific topics, hit us up as well.
I would also add, don't crash out in the comments.
Yeah, don't.
If you start crashing out in the comments, we're just going to tell you, hey, you're crashing out. We're not going to engage with you. If you want to have a discussion, start it the way you would in person. In person, you'd say, wait, help me understand. What do you believe on this? Or I thought this. Can you explain? Or I think blah, 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 blah. But instead of, if in real life, you would never come up to me and, like, in all caps, be like, Mormons don't believe that. You are lying. So don't do that, guys.